Somebody made the point, referenced the story, which, well, we're about to do it here. 3/4 of comedians appearing on the BBC shows are left-leaning Remainers with progressive views, an anti-woke pressure group has claimed. This is the Campaign for Common Sense. They analysed a month's worth of programming, then delved into the views that the on-air comics had expressed elsewhere. In total, there were 364 slots filled by 141 different comedians on BBC One, BBC Two and Radio 4 last month. Of that number, 75% were given to comics with publicly pronounced left-leaning anti-Brexit or, quote, woke persuasions. The group added that only 4 slots, just over 1%, were given to comics who were explicitly conservative, pro-Brexit or anti-woke. Now, it's interesting, this, because I know a lot, because of stuff I've done in the past and writing and bits and pieces. I know quite a lot of people that work in this industry, in the world of comedy, and there is little or no doubt that most probably bat from the left. And the only thing I can think is that it's more about batting from a kind of an anti-establishment position. So rather than it being anti-Tory, it's more anti-establishment. Would that explain it? I don't know. Because what did all those comics do during 10 years of Blairism? When things like Have I Got News for You was, at its peak, if you like. Clearly, Blair was getting a lot of stick, although many would say, well, Blair wasn't properly left-wing, maybe. Let's speak with Dominic Frisby, writer and comedian. Dominic, how are you, sir?
I'm very good, thanks. How's it going?
It's all right. Nice to have you with us. Did you think is it more of an anti-establishment thing than an anti-conservative thing?
Well, there's so many different things going on with all of this, but the BBC comedy establishment thinks it is punching up because we have a conservative government and it is saying anti-conservative things, and it thinks it's punching up, by attacking Trump because he's the president, and therefore it's punching up. Yeah. What they don't realise is that culture is almost entirely owned by the left, and so they might be punching up politically because they're attacking Boris Johnson, but they are just simply preaching to the choir. They're confirming all the biases, all their own biases. And so in that respect, culturally, if you want to punch up, the brave people, the punk rockers of today, if you like, are the people who are attacking this sort of authoritarian orthodoxy of the left. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, it does. And I've long thought that's precisely what's going on. And I find it odd, because bearing in mind there's quite a lot of comedians, I don't know of what percentage of that 75%, that are pretty, from fairly establishment-type backgrounds themselves, whether it's privately educated, nothing wrong with any of that. But I've always found a bit of a conflict there with some of those guys, because their own backgrounds are not far off the backgrounds of the people they're purporting to attack.
Yeah, it's another form of champagne socialism.
In terms of, so you're a comedian, Dominic, that would be seen as sort of centre-right, conservatively sympathetic. Would that be reasonable?
Well, I actually am a self-declared libertarian, and I don't view politics so much through the prism of left and right, but through the prism of authoritarian and libertarian. So I wouldn't describe myself as centre right. And in fact, I've only ever voted Conservative once in my life, which was in 2010, and that's because I was in the borough of I was in Tooting, where Sadiq Khan was the.
Yeah, I can see what you did there.
It was more a protest vote against him.
I can see what you did there. In terms of, from the BBC's perspective, though, what options are they left with if most of the pool to choose from are batting from that particular part of the spectrum? Then that they have little choice, they might say.
No, they have plenty of choice. There's a lot of laziness in the BBC commissioning process, and this goes very underreported generally in the media. But the fact is, as well as there's a large majority of Oxbridge privately educated Oxford comedians that don't get used by the BBC. What you'll find with the sort of pool of comedians that they use is they're all of them, bar a couple, with 2 or 3 agents. And there's 2 or 3 agents that basically have pretty much a control, a stranglehold over comedy.
Yep.
And that agency happens to draw, like, they will go and watch the Cambridge Footlights show every year at Edinburgh and sign up all the guys who they think are good. Yep. And so it's a self-reinforcing thing. So it's almost like an old school cartel.
Yeah, because you often end up with that curious situation, and you'll be familiar with this, Dominic, where you'll suddenly be watching, I don't know, Have I Got News for You or something, and somebody you've never seen before pitches up, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with using new talent, but you often think, well, would you not have to, really tread the boards down there at the comedy circuit before you got on to a big show like Have I Got News for You? And then you discover they're actually with the same agent as the host or something, and, the deal was, well, you can have this act if you have this one as well.
Yeah, precisely that. The agent's gone. You can have Jonathan Ross if you take this guy.
Yeah, simple as that. Do you see it changing, Dominic? I mean, does it need to change?
Well, there's definitely a big movement to get more comedians from outside of that view. I do think, by the way, it's very important to distinguish between comedy in general and satire.
True.
And people fail a lot of the time. Those panel shows tend to be mostly satirical. But yeah, I mean, satire for sure needs to delve into a pool that doesn't represent. Like, the most interesting satire at the moment is not on the telly; it's all on the internet. Yeah. In all its various forms. And so, yes, I do think it will change, but a lot more slowly than we would like. When Tim Davie made his announcements, 3 or 4 months ago, about how he wanted to see change in comedy, well, nothing's changed. And admittedly, a lot of the guys that were on over the past month will have already been booked. But I can tell you, me and there's about 5 or 6 of us. There's me, Jeff Norcott, Leo Kearse, 2 or 3 others. Yeah. I can tell you, we talk. We've got a little WhatsApp groups that we're all on, and it's not like the phone's not going. We're not getting loads of, like, we want to develop a right of centre satirical show. And and you mentioned Blair at the beginning of that interview. A lot of the best satire of Tony Blair actually came from the left of Tony Blair, attacking him. Like, for a start, Tony Blair positioned himself, his new third way stuff. He almost made himself immune to satire for a long time because he deliberately did that because he didn't want to polarize opinion in the way that Thatcher and Kinnock had done. But even so, a lot of, like, if you think of something like The Thick of It was a really good show, but that was attacking the Labour Party from the left. And I'd like to see some. And this Conservative Party, for me, it's not a Conservative Party; it's a Social Democrat Party. All their policies are basically Social Democrat policies. We've seen incredible, growth in the state since they've come to power, and every time they've had to make a decision, they've taken the nanny state option. Not once have they let people decide what they want. Deferred the decision to individual decision makers. And so, they should be called the Social Democrat Party. And it would be nice to see some satire attacking the Conservative Party from a libertarian perspective, from a right-wing perspective, not from from a left-wing perspective.
I'm with you completely, Dominic. It's great to talk. I love this subject. Dominic Frisby, writer and comedian, who's not part of the 75ers that we talked about, the 75 percenters, which this report uncovered as being comedians who are mostly left-leaning, anti-Brexit, or quote woke of woke persuasions. And it is because I know it's an anti-establishment thing, but then I think of people like, I don't know, the Pythons, more as in, when you think about what those guys would have been, all privately educated, certainly Oxbridge. John Cleese latterly became a Liberal Democrat. I think that's because he fell out of love with the Tories for some reason. Mitch in North London says, I don't mind left-wing comedy. It's the hypocrisy of so many of the people who write and perform it that I can't stand. I guarantee that if every self-righteous comedian who wants to make a career out of their predictable views on tax avoidance by big corporations and underfunded public services had to first release their own tax arrangements into the public domain, they'd all suddenly find something else to be funny about. And it's also fascinating what they've tried to do. I mean, it's not easy to do. I was talking to a comedian, no names here, about this quite recently. because the BBC decided, I think a couple of years ago now, that all panel shows should be 50-50, male-female. And on the face of it, there's nothing wrong with that until you realise that there's about, of all the comedians that are out there to choose from, about 9% are female and 91% are male. So the pool of choice is terrifyingly lacking when it comes to finding good female comedians on the basis there just isn't as many of them by a country mile. Now, and this guy was saying he's around about kind of probably late 30s, early 40s. Very good, successful, but doesn't get some of the big gigs that a 20-something female might get. And he would never, ever get them set against a 20-something female. Even if she... And by the way, there's nothing wrong with being a 20-something female comedian if you're really good. But my point is one that isn't anywhere near as good as him would always get the gig over him. And something's gone really wrong in that respect. There's clearly, the divide, the idea there's no funny women is demonstrably just a stupid thing to say. I could list you, from Lucille Ball right to the present day onwards of people who are hilarious. I mean, for whatever reason, I've never understood why, but America just offers up some of the funniest female comedic voices on the planet, and always has done, like since the 50s. I don't know how that's been the case, but it just has been. And we've got a class thing as well over here. There's a class issue in comedy that doesn't get a look in the same kind of way.